Mary Beth Cadillac from the Tri-State chapter of the Scleroderma Foundation in Binghamton, New York. And thank you for calling in for this program today. Our speaker today is our very own Joann Fisher. Joann's been with us since March of this year, so not very long, but she has extensive background. I often say that we speak the same language because she has that medical background, so it's kind of nice to have somebody in the office that knows what I'm talking about. So Joann has an associate's from SUNY Broome here in Binghamton and took a national certification for her credential, which is CMA, Certified Medical Assistant. She attended Binghamton University and has a master's in human development. A bachelor's, in human development. I've given her a master's. Next thing I'll give her a PhD. We'll be all set. She's worked in physicians' offices in this community and other communities over the last 25 years. So she's been in rheumatology offices, cardiology, GI, just to name a few. And she works with patients. She feels strongly about her career choice because she can make a difference in the lives of patients and the experiences they have in their physician offices. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to Joann, and we'll go from there. Do you want to be on speaker or the headset?
That's fine.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. As Mary Beth just said, I have worked in a physician's office for 25 years. Primarily, I started working in a primary care physician and worked several specialty practices such as rheumatology, gastroenterology, cardiology, urology, and pulmonology. Therefore, I've seen many patients over the years who have not come in prepared to have the best outcome of their visits. So the purpose of my talk today is to try to enlighten folks about the best way to get the most for your time with the doctor. And the biggest part of that is your communication. That's key for both the physician and the patient. Physician needs to know what your problems are, how long you've had them, what makes them worse, what makes them better, what you've done for them, and any other information you can give. Then the physician will review that information, do an examination with you, and perform various testing in order to be able to diagnose. Once a diagnosis has been determined, then the physician needs to explain the diagnosis and treatment options so the patient has a clear understanding. Many of you see several different physicians because you have issues with different body systems. And therefore, you require a specialist in those areas. Coordination of care will assist you and the physicians in order to receive the best care possible. It's extremely important for each physician to be aware of medications and treatments by your other providers. Depending on your medical facility, it's possible that this is already being done, especially since there are electric health records now, and everything is easily accessible on the computer. But if you're seeing physicians that are not part of the same grouping, you may need to make sure that those other physicians now can get information. Sometimes if you find out that they're not part of that same organization, then you might need to sign release of information. And most people don't realize that, that the release of information that you sign for one doctor, that does not necessarily release your information for all your other providers. What that does is that allows the doctor you're requesting the information from to send it to the doctor you're requesting receive it. They're not going to send all of the other information from your other providers. That's known as a breach of HIPAA. and I'm sure all of you have heard HIPAA. It is a Health Information Portability and Accountability Act, and that's basically meant to maintain your confidentiality. Excuse me. Let me just, to get the attention and care you need and deserve while that clock is ticking. Let's remember, you're basically in there for 15 minutes or so. That brief encounter needs to be as efficient as possible. Sometimes folks come in and they tell all kinds of stories, and they're expecting to have a visit with the doctor, not just talking about their medical care, but also their family and different vacations they're taking. That's all well and good, but you have to remember that's eating into your time with your doctor's visit. So I have a few different things that I'd like to suggest to you in order to make the most out of the time you have with your doctor. First, you need to arrive early for your appointment. And a lot of people say, well, why should I arrive early? The doctor always runs late. Well, that may be true, but in the office, perhaps they might need some new paperwork completed by you. If you arrive early, that will give you some time to complete that information. You also want to notify the office if you have any special needs. For example, a wheelchair, or if you're hearing impaired, any other thing that might cause some assistance. Also let them know if you'll need a work excuse. Sometimes you have a doctor's appointment and work is pretty good about it. They just want an excuse written that says, yes, indeed, you were at the doctor. So if you do it then, they can prepare it before you leave. If you are seeing a new physician, try to find any paperwork online or contact the office and have them send it to you ahead of time. This will give you time to complete your paperwork and gather all the information needed. I don't know about you, but personally, if I go to a physician's office and I have to start thinking about when I had my tonsils out or when I had a certain procedure done, I don't remember off the top of my head. So if I have to gather that information, doing it at home makes it a lot easier. Bring all necessary insurance information with you. If a referral was required for this appointment, make sure the proper forms were completed and sent to the appropriate office. This will alleviate you having to be turned away because the paperwork didn't arrive. Specialty practices especially cannot see you unless you have that referral, or your insurance won't pay for the visit. One of the biggest things you can do is to make a health information sheet. It should include a list of all your symptoms, when they started, which are most severe, and how they've changed over time. You want to include any home testing that you've done. For example, if you're taking your temperature or your blood pressure or blood sugar, you're monitoring that on a routine basis, bring those bits of information with you to the doctor's office. Also note in this health information sheet the reason you're seeing the doctor today. If there are several reasons for your visit, you want to prioritize them. List the most important to you first. Try to limit your concerns to 3 items. I've had patients that would come into the office with 7, 8, 10 things, and while the doctor may want to try to handle those things for you, 15 minutes is not a long time, so you may need to make several appointments to get everything taken care of. So what you want to do is prioritize and make sure that on this day you're handling the things that are most important to you. You also want to make a list of your current medications. And most people think that medications only include things that the doctor has given to you. But that's not true. You also really need to include any vitamins or supplements or any over-the-counter medications. Also, any naturopathic medicines, if you're taking natural remedies, for instance, you want to make sure the doctor knows what you're taking, because even though they may be a natural element, they may affect your medications that are being prescribed by the doctor. If you require any refills on your current meds, this would be the time to let the doctor know, or perhaps even the nurse or medical assistant as they're doing your vital signs. If you have any allergic reactions or side effects or other reactions to medications, that information should also be included. You want to note your current medical history, any diagnoses you have, diseases and conditions, and treatments for them. Names and contact information for other providers that you see. The doctor may want to reach out to them for additional information or to answer questions. Your family history should be discussed and included on this form. This will clue the doctor to watch for those health issues with you. Certain health issues are hereditary, so if a parent or grandparent had that issue, it may show up somewhere down the line and perhaps with you. Include your personal contact and emergency contact information. If the office needs to reach out to you, perhaps to change an appointment or maybe to go over a lab result, they need to know how to get a hold of you. And if you're in the office and perhaps you're not feeling well and might need to go over to the hospital, they want to know an emergency contact to reach out to. So that's very important to have that there as well. Make several copies of this health information sheet so that you can leave one with your doctor's office, leave one with your emergency contact, and keep one for yourself. It's very important to have that easily accessible. And you want to make sure that you keep this information updated as your health changes. So after you go to a doctor's appointment, you might want to go home and double check and see if the doctor changed any medications, increased it, decreased it, stopped it, or perhaps there's a new diagnosis. One thing we always tend to look at but never say anything about is how many of you have been into a doctor's office and they come in and they're looking at the notes and they're not looking at you and you can tell, oh boy, they're really in a rush or they're, perhaps a little out of sorts. So you might want to just nicely say something like, gee, you look busy today. And that should do the trick. That kind of brings them back to you instead of where they were 5 minutes ago. You want to consider your symptoms in detail. When you're talking to the doctor, you need to be honest. Be honest about how the symptoms are affecting your quality of life. Be honest with discussing symptoms, no matter how embarrassing or uncomfortable it may be. We don't always want to get into issues that we feel are embarrassing, but the doctor really needs to know how your symptoms are affecting you. Remember, your conversations are private and privileged. You want to make a mental or literal note of how your symptoms impact your daily life and indicate what tasks seem to be most difficult. For example, I'm very stiff in the morning and it's difficult to move, or I'm short of breath when I walk up the stairs. Any of those type of symptoms that you don't think about on a routine basis can alert the doctor to a specific problem, so you want to keep that in mind. You want to put together a list of concerns and questions. Ask for clarification. If you don't ask the question, the doctor may not know that you don't understand. They're doctors, they're there to do a job, but if you don't say, gee, what does that mean, or why do I have to have that test, or anything like that, they may think, okay, you understand what I've said, and I don't need to explain further. Excuse me. When it comes to your health care, that's no time for you to be shy or embarrassed. You really need to speak up and get those questions answered. You need to be your own advocate. Before you leave, you need to make sure that you understand the physician's plan of treatment and any instructions he or she may have given to you. If you don't understand, again, speak up, ask the questions. It's too important. When you go to the doctor, you want to bring any relevant medical records with you from your other doctors. Even if you've requested the records to be sent to the provider you're seeing that day, they may not have been sent. Sometimes things get lost, misplaced, forgotten. And so it would be beneficial to you to have your own copy of your medical records. Then if you can just bring them with you and say, oh, here they are. I was hoping the doctor would send it, but I've got my own, so take a look. You want to bring a notebook. You want to take notes. I can't tell you how many folks, including my mom, who go to see a doctor and come out of the office and they have no idea what was said because they didn't write anything down and they don't know. So if you are able to bring that notebook and try to write everything down that you have a question about or think you might not understand completely, then when you go home, you can take your time and read those things and not have any distractions. So then you might understand a little better or question a little bit more. And if you have any questions, write them down and call or email your provider with those questions. If you're comfortable, perhaps having someone go with you to the doctor's office, that would be ideal as well. It's always better to have a second set of ears or perhaps someone to write those notes for you while you're talking to the doctor. Family member or a close friend, that's very helpful. You want to work with the doctor to create a treatment plan that you will be able to follow, such as using exercise, diet, and managing stress instead of medications. If those other treatments don't work after an agreed-upon time, then medication may be necessary. If the doctor recommends something that you can't or won't do, then the treatment plan won't work. The treatment plan is what's going to hopefully get you feeling better. It may not get rid of the problem entirely, but it may certainly help you deal with daily activities. So you want to make sure that that treatment plan works as well as it can. Again, open communication, clear understanding. You want to avoid wearing nail polish or covering up any rashes with makeup. A doctor will frequently look at skin and nails for physical findings. Covering them up will make that difficult. Anyone who has recently been to one of the ed forums where Dr. Shapiro spoke about the new testing that's being done where they're looking at the nail beds to find that those symptoms that they're looking for, those signs, not symptoms, that they're looking for, if you're wearing nail polish, that's not going to be able to be seen. If you have telangiectasia and those rashes on your face won't show up because you're wearing makeup to cover it up, that's going to affect how the doctor is able to diagnose you. And the other thing I want to make sure is that you always ask for a copy of your test results and request an explanation on those test results. Sometimes you get lab work and you look at it and you see, that has an H or an L after it. What does that mean? that means that that value on that lab work was a little high or it was a little low. And does that mean that I have a major issue? Well, it might not, because it might be only 1 or 2 points high or low. That's not any significant issue. But when you have larger amounts that are different from the normal value to what your value is, you need to talk to the doctor and say, explain this to me. I don't understand. It's all just a matter of how well you can communicate with your doctor. By having all of these things listed and ready to discuss with the doctor, that will make your visit go much smoother. It will keep things organized. By you being organized, it will help keep the doctor organized. And having worked with doctors for 25 years, they need someone to organize them sometimes. So I wanted to give you some additional tips to shorten the amount of time you spend in the waiting room, because your time is just as important as the doctor's time. So you have 15 minutes in the room with the doctor. Do you really want to sit out in the waiting room for an hour for that 15 minutes? So just some little tips that I've come up with over the years to help change that a little bit. For shorter wait times, try to schedule your visit for the first slot of the day or the first slot after lunch. A lot of doctors' offices do physicals or new patient appointments first thing. And in the afternoon, the first appointment after lunch, they're still on time because they haven't started seeing patients yet. Avoid Mondays and Fridays. These are days that most people will take off of work and or keep their kids out of school. Or these will be, especially Mondays, will be times when patients who were sick all weekend long will want to come in to be seen. So if you can avoid Mondays especially and Fridays, that would be a good way to avoid a very busy office. You want to also avoid the first few days after a major holiday, if possible. Obviously, if you're sick, you're sick. But those first few days after a major holiday is when the doctors come back into the office and the staff comes back in, and you've got lab work that was done and x-rays that were done and other testing that was done that the doctor has to review. You've got folks that have been sick all weekend or over the last week, and they really want to see their own doctor, so they've waited, and now they're coming in. It's just going to be more stressful for you if it can be avoided. And if the physician has been out of the office for any reason, like they've been on vacation or they've gone to a seminar, the first couple days after they return, again, just as hectic, because they've got all of this information that they've got to give to their staff so that they can answer patient questions that have called in while they were gone. So that's one way to try to, or several ways to try to avoid so much of a wait time in the waiting room. Now, I also wanted to give you a couple of resources. We have a couple of free websites that I found where you can maintain a list of your current medications, as well as providing additional information and updates about those medications. One is called Medigard, MEDIGUARD.org, and the other is drugs.com. These are two sites that I've kind of looked up and played with a little bit, and they're relatively easy to use if you're computer savvy. You can get on, you can list all the medications you're currently taking. You can look up information about those medications, which might lead to a conversation with your provider. Now, we here in the office have something called My Health Journal. Some of you may already have this. What this is a document that enables you to keep track of all your health care on one written record. Personally, I can use a computer, but I like to have paper right in front of me where I can check back and forth, and I can look at it, and I can add to it or subtract from it. I like to have paper written. So this would be something that I personally would use. This includes your contact and medical history, your hospitalizations, medications, diagnostic tests, GI symptoms, weight record, pulmonary records, optometry or ophthalmology, and any dental records you may have. Now, like I said, we have this here in the office, so if this is something you're interested in, we can certainly talk to one of us and we can get it sent out to you. Anytime you need it, just give us a holler. One other thing I wanted to talk to you about before I finish here and let you ask any questions you might have is if you have questions for your doctor's office, it's good to know who you need to really ask those questions of. So do you want to talk to a receptionist? Do you want to talk to the practice manager or administrator, the medical assistant, the nurse, a physician's assistant, or the doctor? So there are several there that maybe could answer your questions. You really need to know what they do. So like the receptionist obviously schedules your appointment, changes appointments, calls you with any kind of information that you need to be aware of about your appointment itself. They may ask you for patient forms that they sent to you. They may ask you about your insurance. So if you have any questions about any of those things, the receptionist is the person you really want to talk to about that. And the practice manager or administrator, they oversee the operation of the whole office. So if you've got any financial questions or something to do with a payment plan or any of your billing questions, that would probably be the person to talk to. A medical assistant, now that's what I have been for 25 years. We're the one that greets you out in the waiting room and brings you in. We take all your vital signs and we document any symptoms that you might be coming in with that day. And we assist the physician with whatever needs to be done. We're not doctors. We don't diagnose. We don't treat. So when a patient says, "What do you think?" we're not allowed to give those bits of information out. We don't have a license to practice medicine. A technician, perhaps a lab tech, would be the one who does your phlebotomy. A radiology tech would be someone who does your x-ray. If you have questions about those things, that would be who you would contact. The nurse, obviously, can provide medical advice. They do wellness checks. Perhaps if someone needs to have their blood pressure monitored, you can come in and have the blood pressure monitored and just see the nurse and not necessarily have to talk to a doctor. The physician's assistant. Many of you may have seen a PA, as they're called. They have a license to practice medicine, and they're under the direct auspices of the physician. So they have to answer to the doctor. They can perform exams and treat minor injuries and interpret lab results, that type of thing. So you can certainly talk to the PA that you have seen regarding any of results that you may have had. And then the physician, obviously, is your doctor. That's the one who has gone to school for all those years and specialized in certain things. So any specialty practice, the doctor has gone to school even longer. They're the ones that you would go to answer those questions about your direct health care. What does it mean? Because now I have this problem or that problem. That's not what you would call a medical assistant for. So it's really important that you know who to contact as well anytime you need some assistance. It's not going to do you any good to call the office and ask to speak to the doctor, and all you want to do is tell them something that maybe when you were in you'd forgotten what dose of medication you were taking from your gastroenterologist. So you get home, you look at it, and you say, oh, yeah, here's the dose I was taking. You don't need the doctor for that. If you call and ask for the doctor, you're going to wait probably 5 hours till the end of the day when they can maybe call you back, if not the next day. Where if you talk to the right person, your time won't be taken up at all. So hopefully that has been helpful. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask.
I guess I'll be first. I'm glad you explained the role of a certified medical assistant because I wasn't really sure what all things were that you do within the office. So that's good to know. DNR, we didn't touch on DNR and the orders that you might have documentation for. DNR orders, do they go from doctor to doctor, or do you have to fill out new forms each time? How do they work?
Typically, a DNR is an article that is completed by you and a physician. It means for you to check and see that your records have arrived. Like I said, sometimes things get mislaid or they get lost in the mail. That way, if you call and you say, I have an appointment scheduled for, say, Friday. Mm-hmm. My records were supposed to be sent from Dr. Smith. Have they arrived? They could check and say, gee, no, we don't have anything. And so then you could follow up with Dr. Smith and say, did you send the records? Because they don't have them yet.
Yeah. I wish that I had done that with one of my husband's appointments because it was with a surgeon, and the surgeon was new in our area, new to the practice. Something happened. His records never arrived to that doctor, so we walked in there cold, and it made for a very weird, choppy kind of appointment.
It's always beneficial for the new provider to have a copy of whatever records you've had. Again, like I said, if you've had multiple doctors, you need to sign a release of information from each and every doctor. Mm-hmm. Because if you think that your primary care physician is going to be able to send all of your records, they can't.
Right.
It's not their record. They can't send it.
Okay.
They can only send what they've done themselves, not what another doctor has done.
Okay. So actually, it's probably best that the patient just take control of that. Like, you know where you've been. If you're seeing some new practice and you've been to a whatever rheumatologist or a GI person, it's probably really up to the patient then to get those records if you want it at the first visit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But one way around that certainly would be for you as the patient to have a copy of all of your records.
Sure.
Keep a notebook. Get a little binder, punch holes in each paper, and put it in your binder for each different doctor. So if you're seeing a primary care doctor, a gastroenterologist, a rheumatologist, and, say, a pulmonologist, all of that information will be at your fingertips. Mm-hmm. And when you go to the new doctor, you can say, I've requested my records, but I brought my own. Mm-hmm. And that way you can always have the doctor then be aware of anything that you've done, mm-hmm. any medications that you've been on, whatever surgical procedures you've had, any treatments for a specific disorder.
Great. Okay.
Anybody have a question?
What do you think that the doctors, when I go to an appointment, sometimes I think the doctor probably hasn't even looked at my record. Do you think that that's common that when you end up in their office, they haven't looked, because they're kind of sort of, going like this, look at your papers, and what kind of time do they actually have for that?
When a patient is coming in for the first time, for instance, and they have received your records, the staff opens up the mail and will document on there, because we'll look it up and say, gee, do they have an appointment coming up? I don't recognize this name. It will come up that you've got an appointment, say, on Friday. There would be a note attached to this and given to the doctor saying, this is a new patient coming in on Friday. What the doctor typically does is to look through it, albeit quickly, but they do look at it. But they're also in the process of seeing 30 to 40 patients a day on their own before you come in. So quite typically when you do show up, just before they walk into the room, they're glancing back at that again to try to trigger anything that they might have read before but forgotten about.
That makes sense. It's like they've seen it, but
you're new to them. They don't know you. Most doctors that I know will see a patient for years, and when they walk into the room, it's, hi, how've you been doing with your back or your head or whatever the problem may be, because they know you.
Makes sense. Okay. Anyone else have any questions for Joann? Okay, well, as you know, that these sessions are all recorded and made available on our website. It'll be posted probably within a week. We've been having a pretty good track record with that. So on Scleroderma Tri-State.org, you can go under support groups and find Tri-State Connect. Joann is the leader of this group, but she's been very generous in putting together this presentation for you. And hopefully it'll be something that maybe you can use for the future, and you can go back and listen to the recording again. Joann does work here from Monday to Thursday. If you're interested and have any questions for her, you can give a call here to 607-723-2239, or email is
Fisher, Fisher, @sclerodermatristate.org.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for doing your presentation today. I'm sure it'll be valuable to many people. And your next presentation, or your next Tri-State Connect meeting is?
December the 15th.
Okay, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We hope that you'll call in and join us again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.